This is chapter number 8, data types. So, from chapter 1 to this chapter, we're trying to build up a base so that we can write programs. This chapter is dealing with again a very important item called as data and its different types. Let's first understand what is data. Let us say I'm asking you to give me your name, roll number, age, height, and weight. If you look at it, name happens to be alphabets. This is known as characters or string data type in programming. Then you have your roll number, which is going to be a number, or it can even be a combination of numbers and characters. Then your age, height, and weight is all going to be either pure integer or it's going to be a fractional or a real number. So when we write programs, a program consists of a number of variables. Variables means memory location whose values are going to change during the execution of the program. Expressions means if I say x is 2 plus 3 into 5, that is an example of a expression. And different data types like constants, integers, floats, and all constitutes a program. Most of the modern programming languages provide you multiple data types. They could be integers, floating point numbers, characters, long, double, and so on. It's important to have a good knowledge about what is data types and which type to use when. You have to decide to use the right data type based on the problem you are trying to solve. Suppose you want to store the salary of a employees of an organization. You will use maybe a floating point number because the salary can be fractional also. It can be 10,000.50 paise and so on. But suppose you want to read the roll number of a person. It is not going to be a floating point number. More than likely, it is going to be an integer because it's not roll numbers are never like 100.5, 100.6, and so on. There are two or three classes of data types in C++. One is fundamental, derived, and something called as user defined data types. So these words will be clear over the next few sessions. When you're learning things, although I tell you certain words which I am not able to give you the explanation right now, just try to tell you those so that when you listen to them next time, it makes sense that you had heard it somewhere before. And we are going to deal with each of these in detail over a period of time. Now let's understand what is a variable. A variable is a name given to a memory location which may change during the execution or running of the program. So if I say int A represents a memory location assigned by the computer or the compiler. So any variables or a lot of things in programming, anything which is existing like a name of a function, name of a variable, okay, these are known as objects. Object is a general name for variables, functions. Pretty much even programs can be called as program objects and so on. So object is nothing but it's an element or a thing. Now variables may be declared at any point in a program. Okay, it doesn't require that you declare it at the beginning, but before usage you have to first declare, because you need to intimate the compiler what type it is, because the compiler needs to allocate memory space for that. For example, if it is a character data type, it occupies only 1 byte, whereas an int occupies between 2 to 4 bytes. So the type of the data has to be indicated before it is going to be used. And data type is also important because it determines the range of values it can hold. For example, a character can hold values between say 0 to 255 in 8 bits, whereas an integer in 16 bits, assuming it can hold plus and minus numbers, it can hold 32,767 and minus the same value magnitude on the left hand side. Now let's take a look at a declaration of a variable. So suppose I am declaring a variable, it will look something like this. First, I'll need to think of a name for the variable. All right. So if I say int x, x is the name. Data type is int. Int indicates that the variable is a name. So name of the variable must follow certain rules of naming. You cannot give your variable name 2, 3, question mark, 4, 5, 6 like that, because the name of a variable is an identifier. Now, what are examples of identifiers? Like, suppose I'm storing your roll number, I'm accepting your roll number. Don't give the variable name as RN or RO because it's not clear what is the name of it. Give full meaningful names like ROLL underscore number. So this stands for registration number, marks, names, students, and date of joining. Don't give just S, N, M, R. Give meaningful names. Just as me and you have names, why are names given to us? So that we are able to be easily identified. Similarly, variables or memory locations are given names so that we can identify, work, and process them. Now, let's try to understand what are the examples of valid and invalid variable names. This is an invalid variable name, whereas all these were valid. Why this is invalid? Because I cannot declare a variable called as float int equal to 0, because int is a keyword or a reserved word which cannot be used as a variable. Full space marks, you cannot have space between variable names. Two students, it has to begin with an underscore or a alphabet. It cannot begin with a number. Question mark results, it cannot begin with any special symbols. It has to be either uppercase letter, lowercase letter, underscore, or after that you may have 0 or more digits. Now, let's understand a bit more about variables by trying to understand or taking a look at their example. If x is a variable of the data type int, so I can declare x like this. I can say x is an integer data type with the initial value 200. Now the general syntax or the general format for declaration of a variable is first the data type, then the name, followed by the value. In this, the data type is int, variable name is x, valid value example is 200. All right. Don't give somebody's name to an integer variable. It makes no sense. So I hope you have got a decent introduction to what is data. What do you mean by data types? Why they are important? They're important because it tells you what type of values it can hold and what is the range of those values. How do you declare data using this kind of a sample? Then what are examples of valid names and invalid names?